Thank you, Councillor Williamson, for your time.
No problem, Chris. Happy to see you again.
Yes, such a beautiful place you have out here.
Oh, thanks, Chris. You can come and help maintain it.
It would be a pleasure. It would be a pleasure. So, I heard that this upcoming Thursday is going to be a big council meeting, a lot of items on the agenda. First one being the draft financial statements.
Yeah, you're right, Chris. We every year council has to have a look at the draft financial statements and decide whether we're happy to refer those to the external statements auditor to have a look at. So that's what we'll be doing this Thursday, is deciding whether or not to send them to the auditor.
So, in your opinion, what are some of the key takeaways for this 2024-2025 draft financial year?
Well, the statements overall are, tell a story that actually is quite confusing. So the headline item is that we have a very large financial deficit. It's more than $40 million.
Wait a moment, that sounds huge. You're not saying 14, you're saying 40 million.
Yeah, $40 million is the deficit.
How can that be? Because I'm pretty sure last year they projected just a deficit of maybe $10 million. $40 million is significantly more than $10 million.
Yeah, so the deficit that we had signed off in the budget originally was around $5 million. And then I think last time we had a budget update, which was in May, but it was for the end of the March quarter. The estimate then was around 3.4 million. So, look, I've been completely surprised by the size of the deficit, and the councillors that I've spoken to were equally surprised when it came to us. Now, the deficit is made up of our normal operating result, which was negative this year, but also a couple of unusual things. So one of those is the writing off of the Cooma Sports Hall, and this is a complicated story, and I'm not sure I fully understand it yet. But essentially, the value of that hall has been taken off our balance sheet and has to be shown as an expense on the income and expense statement. And the reason it's come off our balance sheet either is because we've decided to give that facility to the Department of Education, or because it already was their product, and that our accounts had reflected the work or the expenditure that had gone into constructing it as work in progress. But the building's now complete, so the work in progress has to come off.
And that's a $15 million building.
Yeah, we got a grant for $15 million. My understanding is the impact on the accounts is $14,771,000.
And I believe the ratepayers have been paying up to $800,000 a year in upkeeping that.
Look, I don't know what the precise number in the upkeep is, but yeah, no. So we pay to operate the facility when it's in use by council, and we pay a large portion of the maintenance and the outgoing expenses, electricity and so forth on the facility.
And so somewhere between October and now, the ownership of that is now in question. Is that right?
Yeah, look, this is something I'm really struggling to understand. When I was taught accounting, you only put assets on the balance sheet that you owned. Now, when things are getting built, there are rules around when they can and can't be capitalised. But for large items like a building, it's normal to put the work in progress on, the value of that on the balance sheet. So you're kind of accurately reflecting, the things you own, even if they're not fully complete. I didn't notice last year that apparently that was on the balance sheet. And it was my understanding that the building itself was always leased. So we didn't own it, the school did. But it would seem that we had on the balance sheet the work in progress value, and that's now been written off. Now, the reason it's a bit confusing is the first set of reports that came to councillors said a different thing. It actually said that we had transferred the asset to the Department of Education. So there's lots of emails going back and forth between councillors and the finance staff, really just trying to understand what's happened there.
Can the council executive transfer such a large asset without going through the councillors?
I don't think so. I think if it was our asset, then we would have had to have a vote of council to give it away, which is effectively what we did with the Yalambee Aged Care Centre. Part of the deal with the other aged care operator, as you know, Chris, was that we gifted them the Yalambee facility, and so that had to come to council for a vote.
Wow, this feels like another amazing Houdini magic trick where millions of dollars are being transferred at the ratepayers' expense.
Well, look, it certainly is unusual, and it's something that we're trying to understand what's happened. I think probably the best thing to do would be to refer it to the external auditor for them to have a look at it, so that we know everything's been done correctly.
And would this be another reason why a forensic audit should be conducted?
Look, in my view, no. I think this is, we need to understand what's going on in terms of the technical accounting, for the purposes of getting your annual reports and those sorts of things right. Forensic audit really is something that you call in when you're unhappy about the financial controls in the organisation, and where you might be concerned that perhaps someone has embezzled money or stolen equipment and dropped them off the asset register or something like that. So this isn't, in my view, a reason why we should do a forensic audit. As you know, Chris, I think we do need a forensic audit, and there are reasons why I think that's the case. But
what would some of those reasons be?
Look, I think the councillors hear a lot from different members of the community around things that they've observed with council's transactions and rumours that circulate, and they have got to a level that, in my opinion, warrants having an independent look at the integrity of the way council conducts business and manages its assets at a detailed level. That's a very different thing to the annual financial statements audit. So in the past, I've heard some people suggest that our annual statements audit by the Auditor General means everything's okay from a financial health perspective. It doesn't do that. The reality is the financial statements audit is about ensuring the financial statements accurately reflect the records of council, What it doesn't tell you is that those records themselves are accurate.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And bringing it back to this quarter,
Mm-hmm.
have there been any other significant write-downs or re-evaluations? I've heard that perhaps the RFS building might have some issues in regards to that costing maybe upwards of $15 million, and who's going to own that? Who's going to maintain it? What's the deal with the RFS building?
Okay, well, look, yes, there has been a further significant change in the accounts issue. So there's been a net loss from the disposal of assets of $15 million. Now I think the way that's worded, disposal of assets, I think it also includes sort of impairment of the value of assets. But what I think's going on there is that council appears to have removed from its balance sheet a bunch of roads or segments of roads that apparently, we had been looking after, but we don't actually own. So either they're pieces of private land or they're crown roads that somehow have, got onto the council balance sheet
And then
over time. Yeah, so from what I understand has happened is council staff have done an audit of the road assets and determined that some roads and some portions of roads are simply not councils, and so they're coming off the balance sheet, and we have to reflect that removal of asset.
Do you know which roads they've taken off the asset sheet?
No, you don't. I don't, and I think that's a really important
your
question.
road, Bumbalong Road, might have been taken off?
Yeah, Bumbalong Road. Well, I can tell you we haven't fixed the damage on Bumbalong Road yet.
Are those craters still there?
They're there.
The gully?
And without a doubt, it's bigger and deeper than when you were here last, Chris.
And council's still not taking any responsibility for it?
Look, I can't really comment, but I will say it hasn't been repaired, so you can work it out from there, I think. Look, I'm all for council having absolute clarity around the assets that we own. So if it would be wrong to say a piece of land was council's if it isn't. So I think it's appropriate that we do this work and we take those things off the balance sheet. And if that requires a sort of a write down impacting the deficit, well, so be it, right? It's not cash leaving the organisation. It's an accounting treatment. I guess the bigger issue, though, and why I think councillors need to know what those roads are and what segments of roads they are, is that if council has been maintaining those roads and road segments, that's been to the benefit of the people who live on those roads. And those people pay rates and in many cases have done so for decades. So if council is no longer going to maintain those roads, then we're effectively putting cost on the landholder, who now either has to do it or has to, suffer extra wear and tear on vehicles and, probably reduced property value as well. And those people haven't done any wrong in order for that to happen, and I think, if I look at the world through the lens of, my neighbour at the end of Bumbalong Road, their rates have gone up like everyone else's, but they can't drive home because the road doesn't exist anymore. And, my concern is that we might be, kind of reneging on the deal, I guess. These people have been paying rates, have been getting services, for many years, and And if we're going to take these roads off the books, are we going to reduce the services for those ratepayers? And that doesn't strike me as a fair deal for those ratepayers.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Was there anything else about the financials that stood out to you?
Well, look, Chris, you asked me about the fire headquarters or the emergency services headquarters, and I actually don't know what the situation is with that building. I understood that it was grant funded. I understood that there was a land swap arrangement between council and Snowy Hydro to facilitate the location where the building's being built. It's my understanding, although I could be wrong, but it's my understanding that when the asset has been built, it will be transferred to council ownership, and that council then is responsible, for the upkeep and maintenance of that asset. Now the asset then will be leased to emergency services, who will then utilise it. But I haven't seen the terms of the lease, so I don't know what that means in terms of rent that would come into council, or what percentage of the maintenance and operational expense would be paid directly by the lessee. But certainly something councillors should see, I think, before that arrangement is done. As you know, though, my bigger concern around that facility is that it's been constructed below the maximum flood level. And I think about a year or a year and a half ago, I brought a motion to council requesting that council write to the Emergency Services Minister and just bring that to their attention, because it's a risk. The risk, I guess, is marginal that the facility might flood, but there's also the risk that you won't be able to get to the facility in the middle of a major flood, which would kind of impact the value of having it there in the first place.
The irony of putting the emergency services building in the middle of a floodplain.
So, sort of confusingly, though, council voted not to write to the minister, but I did anyhow. So I just thought it was too ridiculous that we were building this or allowing this to be built in that location, and without the organisation that bears the risk perhaps being aware of the risk. So out of just being conscientious, I thought it was appropriate to write to the minister.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Williamson. I appreciate that. As a ratepayer, I appreciate that. Thank you. Should we move on to a potentially prickly topic of insurances?
Insurances? Oh, right. Okay. What do you want to know about insurances?
So
Chris?
apparently there's been a lot of talk privately regarding liabilities.
Do you have any further clues on that for me?
Specifically in regard to councillors or mayors being held accountable for legal expenses and things like that, of that nature?
Yeah, okay. So council has a policy, which I think I've read once, that essentially outlines what expenses council will pay on behalf of councillors, and some of those expenses, relate to legal action being taken against councillors for doing our duties, or I guess legal action that might be taken against a councillor by the New South Wales government if they're unhappy with perhaps the way you conducted yourself or a decision that you made. Council has insurance policies. Actually, I think we're a member of an insurance mutual. It's, as far as I can tell, is a self-insurance arrangement. But the mutual puts some of our the risk out to the formal insurance market. So, like most sort of companies, councillors have directors' liability insurance, but that, obviously the cost that you have would have to be higher than the excess under that contract in order for council to call on the insurance. Otherwise, you just pay for it yourself. Like having a minor ding in your car. It's cheaper to get it repaired yourself than deal with your insurance company and pay the excess, perhaps. So I understand that one of the councillors has incurred some legal expenses, and they're seeking to be compensated by council. That hasn't come to council for a vote as of yet. It'd be kind of weird if it did, because you're voting about your colleagues. So, and of course, the council chamber is politicised. So, what would you do if it was your political nemesis who, kind of had that? I don't know how Labor would vote on a Liberal councillor, for example. Just hypothetically, of course. There is rumours that there is legal action afoot to try and get council to deal with that, or to have our insurance provider, brought in to deal with it. I've certainly heard those rumours, but it hasn't come to me formally through the council as of yet.
I appreciate your transparency. Thank
Sure.
you. Thank you, Councillor Luke. You've always been really good with conveying information. Thank you. And finally, I suppose to end on a equally prickly and complex topic, what would be your hopes for the future in regards to the proposed motion regarding the interest in engaging community interest regarding a demerger?
So it's really challenging, I think, for councillors to deal with this, because when you're basically sworn in as a councillor, you're taking on responsibility to act in the best interest of the council and also the best interest of the citizenry. The council is what it is. It simply can't be in the best interest of the council to chop it up into bits and get one entity to cease to exist, right? So it's a bit of a vexed issue, because there is huge community interest in the idea of breaking our council up. If we kind of look at it from a technical perspective, first of all, I don't like the motion itself that's come forward. And the reason is that I don't think demerging our council is the right option. And that's because the word demerge means to effectively unmerge. And I don't necessarily agree the three former councils were the right option for the community. I don't think the current large council is necessarily the right option either. But if we were going to break it up, I don't think I would break it up into the three former councils. And I guess, look, in the past, even the Cooma Monaro Council wasn't one council. We used to have a Cooma Town Council and then the broader regional council, for example. So these things change over time, I think based on the demographics and the economics of the time. So we're 10 years since the merger. I think we should have a really, I'd welcome having a really hard look at what would be the best alternative to the current large integrated council. So I'm inclined to support the motion, but I'd like to tweak the wording so that we're not only forced to look at returning to the 3 former shires.
That gives me 2 options. If you had to choose between maintaining the entity that we are now or splitting it into the previous 3, which one would you prefer? And then the next question would be, I suppose, if you could foreshadow a motion to this, what would that motion look like?
Well, look, the foreshadowing, I probably wouldn't seek to foreshadow a motion. I'd seek to amend the current motion and then vote on that. If Councillor Stewart is not interested in an amendment, then I'd foreshadow a motion, and it'd be quite similar to what's there, but I would take the word demerge out and instead include looking at a number of options in terms of how to provide good local government to the area at a smaller level than it currently is.
And the first question, which was, if you were forced to pick between the 2, 3 smaller entities, which would be Cooma Shire, Bombala Shire, and Snowy River Shire, or the existing model that's in play right now, which one would you prefer?
Yeah, look, that's a really tough question. I think it goes to whether or not the current council, and I don't mean the councillors and the staff, I mean the large integrated organisation, has achieved the promise that the merger was meant to deliver, and it's my view that it hasn't, and I think that there's a number of reasons why that's the case, but probably the biggest reason is that it was the wrong solution to achieving the benefits that were proposed. And it's the wrong solution because the area is too big. We're basically the size of, well, larger than a number of European countries. It's geologically different. We have different climatic conditions. We have completely different communities with different local cultures and local employment bases, and it just, in my view, was the wrong way to realise the paper savings that having a larger integrated council would achieve. And look, I've always been of the view that this area where we are here in Collington, it has much more to do with Canberra than it does with Cooma, let alone Jindabyne and Bombala. This area, I suspect, would have been more happily married to the Queanbeyan Pellerin Council than to the former Bombala Council, for example. So look, I'm more than welcome having a hard look at the way forward. I don't think the current integrated council has achieved the promise that it was, that was sold to the community.
And final question, if you could have your way, if you had the majority of councillors supporting your motion, what would you ideally want for the region
In what terms?
in regards to the merger or the allocation of shires?
Oh, look, I really don't know what the right, if we were going to break it up, I don't know what the right option is. There are people, more talented than me and with more time than me who can think about, the economics of this and give us the best advice. And so I'm quite happy to support Bob's motion with a few tweaks to bring that about. And let's get the data, let's get the information. But I'm just one person who lives here in this massive shire. So most importantly, what does everyone else want to do? And I'm more than open to hearing what they want to do.
Thank you very much for your time, Councillor Williamson. You're always very humble and you're always very informed, and I appreciate your time. So I hope you have a great weekend.
Okay. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for the chat.
Much appreciated.